Hello students, today we will see the next topic is software requirement specifications, that means SRS. The software requirement documents, sometimes called as the software requirement specifications or SRS, is an official statement of what the system developers should implement, and it should include the both users requirement for the system and the detailed specification of the system requirements. It is the requirement specification for a software system and shows a complete description of the behavior of system to be developed and may include a set of use cases that describe interaction the users will have with softwares. The software requirement specification is a document that captures complete description about how the system is expected to perform. It is usually signed off at the end of the requirement engineering phase. IEEE defines software requirement specification as a document that clearly and precisely describe each of the essential requirements of the software and external interfaces. Then some features of SRS. First feature is it forms the basis for software development. Second feature is SRS provide a reference for validations of final software product. Then third is it is medium or media through the client and used needs are accurately specified and determined. Then fourth is SRS helps client to understand their own needs and requirements. And fifth is it establish the basis for agreement between the client and the suppliers. Then these SRS requirement specification having some purposes and purposes served by the SRS. Then first is feedback. Provides the feedback which ensure the users that the organizations understands the issue or problems to be solved and the software behavior necessary to address those problems. Then second is decompose problems into components. That means organization organize the informations and divides the problems into subparts. That means some components into the parts in any orderly manners. Then third is validations. Uses validation strategy applied to the requirements to acknowledgement that requirements are stated properly. Then fourth is input to design. Contains sufficient details in the functional system requirements to devise a design solutions. Then fifth is basis for agreement between the user and the organization. This is the very important purpose by the SRS. First, it provides a complete descriptions of the functions to be performed by the system. In addition, it helps the user to determine whether the specified requirements are accomplished. Then sixth is reduce the development efforts. Enables developers to consider user requirements before the designing of the system commences. As a result, that means rework and inconsistency in the later stages can be reduced. Here reworks can be reduced. Then last is estimating cost and schedule. Determine the requirements of the systems and thus enable the developers to have a rough estimations of the total cost and schedule of the project. This is the estimating cost and schedule. These are the 7 purposes served by the SRS, that means software requirement specifications. Then concept of SRS. Here first SRS contains these 7 phases. First is introduction, second is information descriptions, then functional description, behavioral description, validations and criteria, bibliography and appendix. Then we will see one by one. Then first what is the concept of SRS? The requirements documents are essential when an outside contractor is developing the software system, and the software requirement specification is a technical specification of the requirement for the software product. Then the SRS records of the outcome of software requirement definitions activity, and it is also known as the requirement document. The main goal of software requirement definitions is completely and consistently specify the technical requirements for the software product. in concise and unambiguous manners using formal notations and appropriate. Then first step is introductions. Then this is the simplified online outline presented, the framework for the specifications. First is introduction. In the introduction state, the goal and objective of the software, describing it in the content of the computer based system, and actually it is nothing but the software scope. This is introductions. It contains system references, overall description, and software project constraint. Then second is the information description. It provides a detailed description of the problems that the software must solve, and information contents and relationships, flow and structures are documented. Hardware, software, and human interfaces are described for external system element and internal software functions. It contains the information context representations. Then second, information flow representations, and it also contains the data flow and control flow. Then third is functional description. A description of each functions required to solve the problems is presented in the functional description. A processing narrative is provided for each function's design constraint are stated, and it is also justified. Performance characteristics are stated, and one or more diagrams are included to graphically representations the overall structures of the software and interplay among the software functions and other system elements. Then this contains the functional partitioning, functional descriptions. Functional partitionings having processing narratives and restrictions or limitations and performance requirements, designing constraint and supporting diagrams. Then control functions having control specification and design constraint. Then behavioral description. The behavioral description section of the specifications examines the operation of software as a consequence of external events and internally generated control characteristics. Probably the most important and ironically the most often neglected section of software requirement specification is the validation criteria. Then how do we recognize the successful implementations, and what classes of the test must be conducted to validate the functions, performance, and constituents. These are specified in behavior description. Then fifth is validation criteria. Specification of validation criteria acts as an implicit review of all other requirements, and it is essential that times and attention to given to this section. Then six is bibliography. The bibliography contains a reference to all the documents that relate to the softwares. This includes like other software engineering documentation, technical references, vendor literatures, and standards. And the last is appendix. The appendix contains information that supplements the specification, and tabular data, detailed description of the algorithm, charts, graphs, and other materials are presented as a apprentice. These are the outline presentations or framework for SRS. Then some needs and importance of SRS. An SRS provides a reference for validations of the final product. A high quality SRS is prerequisite to high quality software. Then third need is another important purpose of developing an SRS is helping the client understand their own needs or requirements. Then fourth is an SRS is important because it establishes the basis for agreement between the clients and supplier on what the software product will do. Then fifth is SRS enables to provide feedback which ensure to the user that organization understand the issue or problems to be solved. And last is SRS uses validation strategy applied to the requirements to acknowledge that requirements are stated properly. These are the importance for Importance of SRS.